Welcome to the battlefield of brains, where strategy meets chaos and every move burns with intensity. Watch grandmasters clash, pieces fall, and legends rise. Wesley thrusts his e-pawn forward aggressively, staking a fiery claim in the center and signaling a sharp, ambitious battle ahead. Ray counters with his own e-pawn confidently, matching force with force and preparing the board for an explosive central confrontation. Wesley develops his knight to f3 swiftly, eyeing f5 and tightening pressure as the early skirmish begins to heat up. Ray brings out his chick's knight with poised intent, reinforcing f5 and hinting at intricate Spanish battleground structures ahead. Wesley's bishop lands on b5 like a sniper on high ground, pinning the knight and sharpening the tension instantly. Ray replies with nf6, boldly challenging the center and daring Wesley to reveal how deep his preparation runs today. Wesley castles with smooth efficiency, pulling his king to safety and preparing to unleash coordinated pressure across the board. Ray jumps in with c4, snatching the pawn and declaring a fearless tactical fight right from the opening phase. Wesley counters with rione, spotlighting the knight and demanding answers as the initiative begins shifting subtly. Ray retreats to d6, regrouping his knight defensively while reinforcing central dark squares with steady, measured precision. Wesley captures on f5 decisively, pulling material back and opening central lines as tension pulses across the board. Ray responds with b7 calmly, completing development while quietly planning to castle and stabilize the swirling battlefield. Wesley drops b1 back creatively, preserving bishop power and preparing deep maneuvers rather than rushing commitments. Ray snaps off c5, restoring material balance and seizing a momentary tactical foothold after Wesley's retreat. Wesley plays x5 assertively, centralizing the rook and keeping Ray's position under relentless tactical surveillance. Ray finally castles, tucking his king into safety and readying his pieces for the impending central storm. Wesley activates c3, bringing another attacker forward and escalating pressure as the center grows increasingly volatile. Ray's knight heads to 8, a quirky retreat that sets up defensive regrouping and hidden counterplay possibilities. Wesley drives d5 forward like a spear, invading Ray's territory and magnifying threats against multiple sensitive squares. Ray answers with bd6, challenging central control and preparing to contest the knights with disciplined calm. Wesley doubles back with rione, reinforcing the e-file and gearing up for tactical fireworks in the heart of the board. Ray brings his knight to f6, reconnecting coordination and standing firm against Wesley's invasive central forces. Wesley captures on f6 with crisp confidence, ripping open lines and forcing Ray's queen to react under fire. Ray takes back with qx-f6, centralizing the queen and refusing to yield momentum after the structural disturbance. Wesley advances d4 with authority, launching central expansion and offering Ray fresh dilemmas in a tightening position. Ray counters with cheeks, reshaping the pawn chain and blocking potential infiltration along d5 with steady discipline. Wesley develops b3, aligning pieces harmoniously and hinting at future kingside pressure that demands Ray's full attention. Ray pushes b6, broadening queenside structure and granting his 7-bishop new life amid rising positional tension. Wesley reroutes to bd3, sharpening diagonal pressure toward h7 and magnifying threats if the center suddenly opens. Ray plays bc7, reinforcing dark square control and preparing tactical motifs should the center collapse violently. Wesley drives d5 forward like a hammer strike, sizing space and pushing Ray's pieces backward under growing strain. Ray responds with b5, countering central influence and trying to anchor his forces against the advancing white army. Wesley calmly builds with c3, stabilizing structure and preparing a flexible platform for future breakthroughs. Ray pushes cx5, releasing central tension and hoping to clarify the pawn structure before Wesley's pieces surge further. Wesley's queen leaps to g4, launching a direct assault and injecting sudden, sharp danger into Ray's kingside. Ray stiffens the center with z6, reinforcing defenses and bracing for the tactical hurricane swirling around his king. Wesley shifts coiffure aggressively, eyeing weaknesses and threatening to punch holes along the vulnerable queenside files. Ray meets the pressure with qd8, reorganizing defenses and keeping the queen poised to repel incoming threats. Wesley activates radon, doubling potential pressure and transforming the center into a powder keg ready to erupt. Ray plays b6, placing the bishop boldly forward and attempting to neutralize long-term threats with counteractive precision. Wesley lifts his bishop to b5 with elegant precision, renewing pressure on Ray's queenside and stirring tension across multiple vulnerable dark squares. Ray answers with a6, kicking at the bishop and trying to seize space while wrestling back breathing room on the flank. Wesley retreats to check smoothly, planting the bishop deep in Ray's territory like a quiet dagger poised for future impact. Ray strikes with b5, expanding forcefully and attempting to chase away Wesley's invasive pieces before the position bursts open. Wesley darts k3 forward, eyeing weak points along the queenside and threatening to harvest loose pawns with surgical accuracy. Ray counters with rebate, aligning the rook aggressively and bracing for Wesley's impending pressure on the b-file battlefield. Wesley snatches on a6 with icy confidence, ripping a pawn from Ray's camp and escalating the momentum of his queenside assault. Ray pushes b4, thrusting the pawn forward to disrupt coordination and spark counterplay before Wesley's initiative becomes overwhelming. Wesley retreats to b7, repositioning the bishop into a menacing outpost that quietly amplifies threats around Ray's weakened structure. Ray brings Rook, centralizing his rook and trying to muster active resistance as the position becomes increasingly combustible. Wesley answers with cxb4, demolishing the pawn shield and opening lethal lines that send tremors through Ray's defenses. Ray lashes out with qh4, creating tactical sparks and probing Wesley's kingside for weaknesses amid the mounting chaos. Wesley captures on f5 decisively, removing a key defender and forcing Ray to confront new tactical dangers radiating from the center. Ray recaptures dx5, restoring material balance while keeping lines sharp and hoping to hold back Wesley's relentless initiative. Wesley plants bc5 with crushing intent, slicing through Ray's position and threatening structural collapse on multiple critical squares. Ray mobilizes rf8, doubling defensive resources and desperately reinforcing the center against Wesley's suffocating pressure. Wesley advances a4 powerfully, gaining space and preparing to pry open the queenside with unstoppable long-term threats. Ray pushes d4, counter-attacking in the center and hoping to destabilize Wesley's coordination before his own camp crumbles. Wesley's bishop lands on b7 like a silent predator, eyeing promotion squares and tightening the strategic noose around Ray. Ray responds with rebate, trying to challenge the intrusive bishop and carve out defensive squares amid growing desperation. Wesley calmly shifts to b7, maintaining dominance on the long diagonal and keeping Ray's queenside tied in knots. Ray plays qe7, reinforcing critical points and preparing last-ditch defensive resources to counter Wesley's surging initiative. Wesley captures bx, tearing off an important defender and further scattering Ray's fragile resistance across the board. Ray answers with arc-spite, recapturing but conceding structural damage that worsens under Wesley's mounting piece activity. Wesley develops bf3 harmoniously, tightening central control and preparing deadly coordination between bishop and queen. Ray grabs qxbd4, greedily, snatching material but drifting dangerously into tactical fire as Wesley's threats loom everywhere. Wesley drives a5 forward, with blistering intent, opening files and preparing to unleash queenside devastation on Ray's position. Ray plays g5, throwing pawns forward boldly in hopes of stirring counterplay before Wesley's advantage becomes irreversible. Wesley calmly answers with h3, preventing intrusions and maintaining a solid kingside structure despite Ray's flailing aggression. Ray captures qxbd2, grabbing more material but stepping deeper into danger as his king's safety dissolves rapidly. Wesley responds with qg6, centralizing the queen menacingly and threatening decisive blows against Ray's exposed weaknesses. Ray brings her sate, shifting the rook into a defensive stance and bracing for impact as Wesley's initiative intensifies mercilessly. Wesley captures qc5, shredding Ray's defensive fabric and accelerating the collapse with a dominant central queen. Ray pushes h6, a small, anxious move, attempting to create luft while clinging to the board's last defensive threads. Wesley strikes with qxd4, collecting material and leaving Ray's position trembling under the combined force of centralized threats. Ray exchanges queens with qxd4, trying to simplify desperately before Wesley's initiative becomes utterly overwhelming. Wesley recaptures Ray xt4, seizing the open file and asserting complete dominance as his pieces flood into Ray's fractured camp. Ray checks with arcaneo, a fleeting tactical jab, hoping to provoke complications despite the collapsing position. Wesley calmly blocks with ardon, shutting down counterplay and maintaining R-tight coordination across his entire army. Ray follows, with rc7, clinging to active squares as he prepares for a final stand against Wesley's advancing forces. Wesley pushes a6 like a battering ram, driving the passer forward and threatening promotion that Ray cannot realistically contain. Ray plays Ray7, desperately planting the rook to halt the a-pawn's march and preserve his final defensive bastion. Wesley finishes with b7, sealing strategic domination, and leaving Ray's position completely paralyzed before the final resignation arrives. I'll end the video here. Please, give me a like and subscribe to my channel. I'll keep finding the best and newest videos to share with you. Thank you so much, and I wish you all happiness and good health.